Has the Standard Organization of Nigeria in any way failed in their role to make sure that companies produce a world-class products?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because coincidentally, we were in a meeting last week with the Enugu Chamber of Commerce, and Standard Organization was there.
Oh, really?
Yes, and I criticized them. I told them, and NAFDAC, that these government agencies are part of what's killing the Nigerian economy and actually killing dreams. Because what we have are public officials saddled with responsibility of creating policies around businesses, and yet these people know absolutely nothing about business. So yes, to answer that question, Standard Organization is the reason we have a lot of inferior products, flying around in Nigeria, because they're simply not doing their job. So it's either they lack the ability to do that job, or they lack the willpower, to crack down on companies that are producing substandard, goods. Because look at it. Now, before you drive from here to Onwasata, I'm sure you find a number of block factories. Go walk into those block factories. You'll find out that these people are producing, blocks that kill people. Substandard blocks. Now, the ratio between cement and sand is just not acceptable. And so you find out that a lot of times you walk into this place to buy blocks while you're loading your truck. These blocks are breaking simply not because they fell, but because people are trying to carry them. Now, isn't that the job of Standard Organization to look into that? It's been going on in our societies for years, and they're just not doing anything because they're lazy. Public servants are just there to eat salaries and not do their jobs. Now look at the roads that we used to build, do construction. Now they tell you these things are measured in MMs. Now when you go look at it, the MMs that were available for construction when I was a kid isn't what we have today. Okay? Because people are trying to save resources to maximize profit. Now, people would do what people would do to make profit. But it is you, the Standard Organization, that should ensure that standards are 100%. And so I just talked about metals and rods, and I talked about cement. It's all in drugs, it's in clothing, it's in toys that our children play with. Some of these toys are laced with lead that causes cancer. Okay? And people just bring these things in with free flow, and nobody checks them at the ports because our public servants just don't do their jobs.
It's like a bicycle attitude towards their duty. What do you think the government should do about it?
Sack them. Listen, you need to audit the public, the civil service. You need to. It's not only money that we audit. It's not only a central bank that you have to audit or government parastatals that are eating money. You have to audit every government agency. Find people who are qualified, promote them, reward them. Those of them who are doing their jobs, reward them. When we were kids, my father worked as a civil servant and retired at the highest level of, state civil service. Those days, leaders had ways of finding out people who were doing their jobs. A governor could actually wear shorts, and t-shirts with a few security personnel and take a walk and into a government parastatal wearing a face cap or something. Disguised. What is he trying to find out? Are people coming to work early? Are they actually doing their jobs? Are they actually doing the jobs that we're paying them salaries for? And so these are some of the ways you can audit people. Audit NAFDAC, audit Standard Organization, audit the different government ministries. Find out if people who are there are qualified or people are employed on the basis of nepotism. Because what you find in a lot of government parastatals is that you make me DG or you make me commissioner, and then I employ all my village people. Whether or not they know the job, that's not important. The important thing is that I employ them when they buy. And at the end of the day, nobody knows how to do their job. And so the question is, you that gave the job, what are you doing to ensure that people are doing the jobs you're paying them salaries for? You're sitting there and relaxing, and every other person is relaxing. Now, listen, I've tried to approach between 2014 and now, tried to approach a number of ministries here in Enugu. And you walk into a ministry 10 o'clock, the commissioner is not there. His deputy is not there. and you think it's a one-off incident. Then you come back next week, it's the same thing. You come back the other week, it's the same thing. You give up at the end of the day. Civil servants are just not doing their jobs because they are dependent on salaries. Make people work for their earnings. And so it is you who's given the responsibility that must ensure that people do their jobs. And if people are not doing their jobs, that means the leader has failed.
Now, do you think people patronize imported goods because of the substandard products that are produced in the country?
It's part of it.
It boils down to
It's part of it, but it's not all of it. Okay, so let me not address that one quickly. There are a lot of wealthy people in this town who still go to Obete to buy shirts at OK, and what we call OK, Okreka. You know, there are a lot of rich people in this town who still do that.
Well, OK is imported actually.
It is imported, but why do they do that? Because most of the boutiques you have in town are selling stuff made in China. And not only are they made in China, they are selling them for quite exorbitant. Enugu is very expensive. Enugu has a mentality that is silly. I don't know where it's coming from. People want to live in this town and have a living standard like that of Abuja. And so you find that people set up stores and sell commodities much higher than what things are sold for in Abuja. Schools in Enugu are stupidly expensive. You see, it's a mentality that people in Enugu have. So they bring in the substandard commodities and sell them for very high. And so some of these people would say, instead of going to buy that for that expensive and it wouldn't last, let me just go to Okreka and buy something that I know. Yes, it's used, but it's good. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing to patronize, to wear stuff that Ndiocha used to go, the white people have won and all of that. But you're left with no option because what you have in the market are all substandard. Okay? So the thing is, on that, I believe I've answered that question. But then the other reason is a status quo issue, right? It's coming from overseas, okay? So I prove that I belong to a certain class of society if I wear foreign-made goods. That has been a long time coming in our societies. And so people don't want to patronize stuff that are made in Nigeria. So if they tell you it's made in Nigeria, I don't want to wear it.
Whose fault is it?
It's our fault.
There was a campaign during...
it's our fault. It's your fault.
Okay.
It's your fault.
There was a campaign
there was a day.
Good luck Jonathan's administration. There was the Buy Nigeria to Grow the Naira campaign.
Yes. Dora Akunyele had one too.
Yes. Headlined by Ben Mire Bruce. And they were trying to popularize, make Nigerian goods get credence or credibility amongst the Nigerian populace. Do you think this campaign actually lived out its function?
No, it didn't. It was short-lived. But Dora Akunyele had one. What was it? Buy Nigeria. There was something like this. Made in Nigeria. There was a campaign she had. Rebrand Nigeria. Rebrand Nigeria. Those campaigns would have been good if we actually followed them. But you see, the problem is that you come up with those policies, and who are the first people to break them? Nigerian politicians. Right? So we're saying, we talk about, there's this policy. It's not federal character. No, it's not federal character. There's this policy that says that if any government agency wants to procure goods, first we will look for that those goods in Nigeria. If there's a manufacturer in Nigeria, we buy it from that manufacturer. But if there isn't, then we can source it from outside. But we have a number of car manufacturers in Nigeria. In the Southeast, we have one, a major one. Now, the question is, how many governors in the Southeast are driving these cars? How many ministries in the Southeast are using these cars? We rather the Toyotas and the BMWs and the Hyundais, and then we will not patronize our own. How would we grow? How would we create jobs? If we keep sending all this money outside, all these monies outside, we create jobs for those countries, while our own people lack, in jobs. And so the only way to do it is for our leaders to lead by example. And so if we say that we need to do the right things, it will start with the commissioners, it will start with the governors, it will start with the presidency. Start wearing Nigeria. Both of you actually beat me to it. Today you're wearing Nigeria. Okay. I often wear Nigeria. I'm sure you've never seen me dressed like this in the studio, right? so both of you beat me to it, because we must patronize our own. Every time you walk into the store and you buy an abada material and you take it to a tailor in the market or tailor anywhere in Nigeria to sew that for you, you are helping grow Nigeria's GDP.
Okay.
So we need to scale that.
Okay, you made mention in your previous analysis, if you with what you just said about patronizing people, just are very laid back when it comes to patronizing Nigerian-made products, because there's been this thing about substandard products being produced. How do you begin to reconcile this? And if you've on several occasions bought goods that are substandard, how do you trust that the next one you're going to buy is of quality?
Now, I see, it's a good question, but it's all about commitment. I was actually thinking about this yesterday. You see, Chinese people are deliberate. You know what I mean by deliberate? Every Chinese person, I mean, I've traveled around the world and I know this. So there's no way I can say it's every Chinese person, but most Chinese people have a mission. They understand that China is out to overcome the world. And so they understand they are players in that process. And so you find out that every Chinese, no matter where you see them, their goal is to do well and send back their profit to China. Because they know that's how they're going to help grow their economies. Chinese people buy Chinese food. Okay? Chinese people dress Chinese. You don't see Chinese people wearing your suits. You've seen many Chinese people in Nigeria. How many of them have you seen wearing suits? They make suits in their countries. Yes, a certain vocation calls for it. They will wear that. But mostly, they dress simply. But they do their businesses and repatriate their funds back to China. They're deliberate in doing that because they want to grow China. Right? Now, any commodity made in China, Chinese people patronize it. They will first patronize theirs before they begin to think about other ones, unless there's a brand that is much better than anything they can find in their country. That's when they can switch, right? Nigerians need to become deliberate. Now, you talk about substandard goods. Yes, part of why first Nigerians started patronizing foreign stuff is that, our people didn't have the expertise. They didn't have, for example, making shirts and all of that. But then the point is, if we don't continue to patronize them, they'll never get good. So we must be deliberate in patronizing our own. Yes, you go make a shirt and it doesn't come out good. Shirt I drop one of my, I don't really fancy it. You come back tomorrow. The more shirts he makes, the more chance he has to hone his skills and become better. Okay? In the 80s and 70s, Toyota today wasn't the Toyota. Toyota then wasn't Toyota now. It wasn't as good. Nobody wanted to drive those Japanese cars then because they weren't as good. But they kept at it consistency and they kept improving and people kept buying because what they offered was a cheaper alternative than European and American cars. And so people kept buying from them, and from buying from them, they continued to make more cars and they continued to perfect their skills. And Toyota became Toyota of today. And so if we don't patronize our businesses, they will never become perfect. And so that's why we as individual citizens have a role to play. We must be deliberate in growing our economy. Let's not just criticize government. Yes, they have their many problems, but we have our part to play. Okay, let's continue to patronize our own. Let's rather our textile industry, to that of the foreign nations. Let's rather our shoes. If you find somebody making shoes, patronize him. Let's eat our food. Forget about all of this foreign foods that are killing our people. When I was a kid, we didn't have as much cancer and kidney problems as we have today. Because now we're eating all canned food. And the problem is that anything that you're consuming and you lay it down and in 4 days it doesn't go rancid, it's poison. Any food you're eating, you put it down in 4 days, it doesn't grow maggots, it's poison. And that's the thing that people are consuming. All the tin tomatoes, all the beef, all the stuff that are in tins, these are poisons because they are laced with preservatives that are killing our people.
Do you think people are purchasing these things because they're a lot cheaper than buying the, very fresh foods, so to say? These things are imported from outside the country and they're a lot cheaper. And the purchasing power in Nigeria is not really strong for the individual, the common man in the street. Do you think people are going to purchase these imported things because they're actually cheaper for them?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily, but like I mentioned, status quo. If you eat certain foods, you dress a certain way, you are perceived to be up there on the upper echelon of society, right? That's one, status quo. Number two is convenience, right? A lot of people, we have working moms now. Those days we had a lot of sit-at-home moms, who could afford to go to the market, buy fresh stuff and make them before the kids came back from school. Food was already served, right? But today, moms are working and dads are working, right? So people are looking for ways to cut on the time they spend in the kitchen. And so that warrants, the eating of packaged food. Indomie is very, very famous now and very convenient because you just buy it 2 minutes, it's done. But listen, it's not safe. Okay, I want you to, if you're listening to me right now, just do a little experiment. Okay, boil your Indomie. Sorry, I shouldn't mention the brand, but boil that noodle, whatever, and pour the hot water into your sink. Sieve it into the sink, and watch what you're going to see. What you're going to see is that you're going to find wax all over the sink, and that's what we're eating, right? I know you all have your rules and all of that, and I'm not supposed to mention brands and stuff like that, but the point is, our people need to listen. Our people need to know what they're eating. We need to go back to our own, right? Eat your ofa akwu. Make that and eat it. It's delicious. It's good. It's safe. Okay, eat your native dishes. Okay. Let's stop all this nonsense of sending all our money, because the more money you send out, the more money we lack in circulation, and that's draining our economy.